Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Welcome to the 2024 College Football Team Autopsy Report. An autopsy report is a document that summarizes the findings of an autopsy, an examination of a body after death. It includes details of the examination, tests, and observations performed, as well as the cause and manner of death. Just like a real autopsy report, the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network College Football Autopsy Report examines a team's body of work after the season has concluded. This report includes a review of the team's season win total and whether they met expectations, key offensive, defensive, and special teams metrics that shaped the season, a deep dive into coaching decisions, including situational play and fourth down aggressiveness, a final season grade, evaluating execution, performance in key moments, and consistency, the final verdict, analyzing what went right, what went wrong, and what must be fixed for 2025. With the 2024 season in the rearview mirror, it's time to examine the patient. To present the findings, we have called in our Chief Medical Examiner and Senior Analyst, Kenneth.
And welcome back to the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network Team Autopsy Report. Folks, we got the Pitt Panthers there on the autopsy table. We need to take a deep dive into this program and where is it going under head coach Pat Narduzzi. Just completed his 10th season as the head man there in the Steel City. His record, 72 wins, 56 losses. And if you take out the really two best years that he has had as a head coach, in 2021, where he went 11-3, 9-4 in 2022, this program has basically barely been a 500 team in the other remaining 8 years. So, Coach Narduzzi, we need to figure out, are you steering this team back on the right track after a disappointing 2023 season where you went 3-9, got the seven wins last year? We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Or is this about where this program is going to be under your leadership? Let's put the patient on the table. All right, let's begin right there with that 7 wins as I talked about it. Going to the betting win total, as we like to always do in these podcasts. And if this is your first one, thank you for joining us, whether it's on our YouTube channel or on our Twitter feed at Crunchtime VIP or listening on your favorite podcast platform. We're going to go through all of this information here for you. Okay, so back in June, this team had a season win total of 5.5. Now, they exceeded that by a full game and a half, getting to that 7-win regular season plateau there. So excellent job there. When we look at our composite win total, basically we have 3 statistical categories that make this up. And This number is pretty much in line where Pitt was last year. We had that number at 6.5. Now, they were able to exceed that, but we basically had this team with a toss-up game, either going 6-6 or 7-4. I'm sorry, 7-5 in the regular season. I think we'll be able to find out which game that was that they won that probably tilted that schedule, tilted that into the positive there. But regardless of how we look at it, key takeaway is Pitt was able to meet their win projection, finishing 7-5 in the regular season. This team's passing game was strong, but inefficiencies in third down situations and inconsistent defense prevented them from going even further than what they did. I think we're going to be able to find that out here. Now, let's talk about two things that help make up your final grade once we get to the final verdict here in about the next 22 minutes. I'm going to try to stay on schedule here. Your strength of schedule. Basically, what you can control as far as your strength of schedule goes is what kind of teams do you play in the non-conference? Did you play a bunch of, let's call them layups, if you will, or did you really test yourself in the non-conference? Now, as far as your in-conference schedule, with the expanded conferences that we've seen from now the Power Four gobbling up the remnants of what used to be the Pac-12, you don't really get to play just about everybody in your conference anymore. So there could be years where you miss maybe even the top 3 teams in your conference just by a look at a draw. Then we're going to look at your strength of record. Basically, how did your opponents do during their 2024 campaign? For Pitt, a strength of schedule of 0.423. That was the 53rd toughest schedule out of 134 Division I teams last year. Now, when we look at their strength of record, 0.545. That was 60th out of 134 teams. So you're going to see a mixed bag here of some quality teams on Pitt's schedule and some very underperformers there. So I'm going to let Tina pull that graphic up for me for everyone that's watching. And then for our listeners, I'm going to go through it. So I just mentioned their strength of record being at number 60. Here are the win-loss records of their opponents. Kent State, winless, 0-12. That'll certainly drag down your SOR and SOS number. Cincinnati, 5-7. West Virginia, 6-6. An FCS opponent in Youngstown State. North Carolina, 6-6. Cal was 6-6. Syracuse, 9-3. SMU, 11-1. Virginia, 5-7. Clemson, 9-3. Louisville, 8-4. Boston College, 7-5. Folks, it's not a coincidence. Once they stepped up in competition outside of Syracuse, this team did not beat a team that was over 500 last year. Now, we want to take a look at how good were the defenses did Pitt's offense go up against last year. So we used that baseline number of 68. That's how many Power 4 teams we had last year when you include the top 4 conferences and Notre Dame. So Cincinnati was 31st. West Virginia was 59th. Cal was 46th. Syracuse was 67th. SMU 34th. Virginia 65th. Clemson 35th. Louisville 40th. And Boston College 55th. So none of their opponents were inside of that top 68. Not one of their opponents were inside of the top 25. So you were playing some middle towards back end of that top 68, but did not face one team inside of the top 30. Highest ranking team that they went up against was Cincinnati back in week 2, it looks like. So let's talk about the offense here. Let's spend a few minutes talking about the offense. I'm going to give you the NCAA average during the regular season last year. I'm going to give you the basic raw accounting numbers for Pitt last year, and then we're going to give you our adjusted number for those key stats. So average team last year scored about 28 points per game. Their passing offense was about 227 yards per game, 160 yards rushing, 387 yards of total offense. The Pitt Panthers averaged about 31.8 points per game. But when we adjust for opponent, that goes down by almost a full touchdown, down to 25.7. Their passing game, on the surface, it looks elite, averaging about 278 yards per game passing. When we adjust that for opponent, we trim off 29 yards per game passing there when we adjust for opponent, down to 249 yards per game passing. Their rushing offense, 128.5 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, we do see a slight improvement there up to about 139, so about a 10-yard per game improvement there. Total offense, 406 yards per game, but when we adjust for opponent, goes down about almost 19 yards, down to 388 yards per game, basically right there on the NCAA average. Let's dive a little bit deeper. The average team scoring drive percentage was about 40% last year. Their drives ending with a touchdown, about 29%, 39% on third downs. For Pitt, their offense scoring drives, basically right there on the average, 40%. As far as their drives ending with a touchdown, just a tick below the average, they were at 26%. The third down conversions, 3 percentage points off of the average, only at 36% conversion rate on third downs. Now, average team allowed about 23.5 sacks per their regular season total last year. This Pitt offensive line, not good. Allowed 36 sacks during the regular season. Compound that with 17 turnovers, you're going to see an offense that, when we look at them overall, if I had to bullet point it, scored points, but efficiency, not so good. Let's take a look at where this team was in our 3 E's from that category. We go a little bit deeper. So we're going to look at your overall offensive effectiveness, explosiveness, and efficiency. And for Pitt last year, outside of the top 65 in all of those categories, effectiveness, this was the 69th most effective offense last year. As far as being explosive, 77th. And as far as efficiency goes, 67th. Pitt ended the regular season as our 71st rated offense in 2024. Let's flip it over to the defense. What kind of caliber offenses did this team go up against? And again, we're going to use that benchmark number of 68. How many of their opponents were inside of that top 68? Cincinnati was 42nd. West Virginia was 36th. North Carolina was 40th. Syracuse was 20th. SMU was 10th. Clemson 13th. Louisville 18th. Boston College ended the regular season as our 54th power-rated offense last year. So about 8 of their opponents finished inside of that top 68. Now, here's what we're going to see about the defense. Unlike the offense, this Pitt defense faced 4 teams inside of the top 25 last year. Stark comparison to what their offense went up against as far as defenses go. So if you average that out, their opponents week in and week out would have been about 48th from an offensive standpoint. So you're looking at an offense that probably would have been in that 7-5, maybe contending for an 8-4 record just based on what their offense was capable of last year. Let's go through the defensive metrics here. Again, we're going to give you the raw accounting numbers and then our adjusted numbers. Pitt, points per game allowed at 26.8 points per game. When we adjust that down there, probably a field goal better, down to 23.5 points per game. Their pass defense, on the surface, 258 yards per game. When we adjust that for opponent, gets them right there at the NCAA average of 219 yards per game passing, almost a 40-yard per game improvement there by their pass defense. When we look at their rush defense, accounting stats say 116 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, goes up about 18 yards per game to 133. Still about, let's call it almost 19 yards per game better than the NCAA average there. Total offense allowed 374 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, number sits at 352 yards per game. So about a 22-yard per game improvement. Again, look at the quality of opponents that they faced. As I mentioned, 4 of those offenses that this defense went up against were inside of the top 25. Actually, all 4 were inside of the top 20. So they did face some high caliber offenses, even in losses, performed a little bit better than what their offense performed against those defenses. Now, this team could absolutely get after the opposing team's quarterback. This team in the regular season generated 40 sacks, almost 17 more than the average team would have generated last year. That is phenomenal pass rushing defense there. Now, opponents going for it on 4th downs do see a little bit of an issue here. 16 conversions on 28 attempts. Their opponents were converting 4th downs at a 57% clip, about 4 percentage points better than the NCAA average there. Defense forced 16 turnovers. So while they were generating sacks, those sacks weren't turning into turnovers. You kind of want to see some more strip sacks there and possibly a few more interceptions because that ball is needing to come out of the quarterback's hands just a little bit faster. Now, let's take a look at the 3 E's for Pitt's defense. 36th best effective defense last year. 43rd in explosiveness as far as not giving up a lot of explosive plays. And as far as efficiency goes, Pitt was 45th as far as defensive efficiency goes. They were our 40th ranked defense overall last year. Let's take a look at the special teams for Pitt. And again, we see kind of a mixed bag, if you will. Converted 17 of 20 field goal attempts, 85%. That is almost 9 percentage points better than the average team performed last year. Did make all of their extra points. However, the punting game really kind of did not flip the field good enough last year. Only 41.3 yards per punt. That was good for 94th in the country last year. -1 turnover differential. That put them in the turnover differential defensive rank there at 95th. Discipline was also an issue with this team. 7 penalties per game for about 63 yards in true penalty yards. So when you think about the hidden penalty yardage there, this team was probably over 100 yards in lost yardage there just because of penalties. Now, let's take a look at Coach Narduzzi from last season. In one-score contest, he was 3-2. And if you're still looking on the screen, I said that there was one swing game that put them over that win total compared to where we have. Look no further than that matchup against Cal where they won that game 17-15. That is the reason why they went over their season win total of 6.5 as far as our composite win total, getting to that 7-win mark. That game against Cal was absolutely the difference in that. I said I would get that found quite easily. That was the game there. So back to Coach Narduzzi. 3-2 in one-score games, 2-3 against quality opponents. We see some missed opportunities for this team, and they had a chance of beating both Virginia and Clemson, losing those two back-to-back weekends by one score there. So you're looking at a Pitt team that was consistently inconsistent there from just a team overall standpoint. All right, let's take a look at how, before we do, let's take a look at the quarterback here because we have a little bit more time on the clock. So quarterback Eli Hosteen appeared in 10 games last year, completed about 62% of his passes for 2,228 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 7 INTs. So we're looking at a 5.8% of his pass attempts were touchdowns. Kind of want to see that number go up a little bit more. Percentage of his passes that were intercepted at 2.4. Definitely want to get that number below 2. Yards per attempt. Eli was at 7.7, so not really pushing the ball down the field. Only averaged 223 yards per game passing. Let's take a look at the running game here to see if there's any standout there. Running back Desmond Reed, 185 carries, 966 yards rushing, 5.3 yards per rushing attempt, only 5 rushing touchdowns for their leading running back. Only had about 88 yards per game on the ground. Now, Desmond Reed did contribute in the passing game, 52 receptions, 579 yards, 11 yards per reception, 4 touchdowns. So if you add up his numbers from a total offense per game number, that looks a lot better there. You're talking about a running back almost over 140 yards per game in total offense there. Would like to see him find the end zone a lot more than what he had. Only 9 total touchdowns on 236 plays from scrimmage there. So a solid, decent usage rate, but not finding his way to the end zone. Let's take a look at, and he was their leading receiver along with Mumpfield, tied for receptions with 52. Mumpfield had 813 yards receiving there. So got to find a true standout wide receiver that this team can lean on. Okay, now let's get into how this team performed from an offensive standpoint in their wins and compare that to how they looked in their losses. In their 7 wins, this offense was absolutely electric, 41 points per game. Doing it through the air, about 283 yards per game passing on 34 pass attempts. Keep that number in mind, the pass attempts per game. 8.2 yards per attempt, 12.8 yards per completion. Where this team was really making hay was on the ground. 29 rushing attempts per game, 161 yards per game rushing, 5.5 yards per rushing attempt. This team was extremely balanced from a pass run ratio, 54% run, 46%. 54% pass, 46% run rate. Converting on third downs, only 36.6% conversion rate on third downs. Committed 6 total turnovers in those 7 wins. In their 5 losses, 19 points per game, 45 passing attempts per game, but only 271 yards through the air, 6 yards per pass attempt, 10 yards per completion. Still about 30 rushing attempts per game, but that rushing total is cut in half. Only 83 yards per game rushing, 2.8 yards per rushing attempt, 60% pass, 40% run in their losses. Still could not convert on third downs, still 37% there, did commit 11 turnovers in those losses. When we take a look at the defense, in their 7 wins, defense was only allowing 22 points per game. Opponents were throwing for about 256 yards per game, passing on 39 attempts, 6.6 yards per pass attempt, 11.3 yards per completion. Opponents did not find a lot of success in the games where this team, Pitt, won last year. 37 rushing attempts, but only 94 yards per game rushing, 2.5 yards per rushing attempt. Their opponents' conversion rate on third downs, 31%, and this defense forced 13 turnovers. In their 5 losses, their opponents were averaging 33 points per game, 262 yards per game passing, but doing it on 8 fewer attempts, only 31 attempts, 8.5 yards per attempt, 13 yards per completion. The run game saw a significant increase there from a rushing total. 38 rushing attempts per game, so only 1 more rush attempt per game, but the rushing yardage goes up to 146 yards per game, 3.8 yards per attempt. Opponents converting on third downs, that goes up to 41%, could not force any turnovers, only 3 forced turnovers in those 5 losses. So when this team lost, they were giving up 11 more points per game while scoring 22 more points per game. Offensively, they were running the ball better and stopping the run much better when they won, whether it's from offense and defense. So that's what we saw from Pitt. So what went wrong for this team in 2024? 3 things really stand out. Poor efficiency on third down, inability to control explosive pass plays on defense, and really struggle with turnovers, as I mentioned. Let's go ahead and get to the final grade here. The Pitt Panthers will get a solid B- from us. The reason for that, strong passing game, yes. Red zone efficiency at times, yes. Excellent defensive front. However, third down struggle, turnover issues, and a high sack rate allowed there by the offense. Final verdict, Pitt had a solid season, meeting their season win total projections, but failed to exceed that even further due to inconsistencies in key areas. So what does Pitt need to do in 2025 to kind of rectify that? I got 3 keys for you, and I'm going to go through these here. Key number 1, develop a more balanced offensive attack and become more explosive. Improve pass efficiency and maintaining a consistent run game, because this team only averaged 5.5 yards per play. Key number 2, they must enhance the third down and red zone efficiency. Converting these key opportunities will lead to more scoring chances and protect that defense at the same time. And finally, the third key, they absolutely must limit the turnovers. You're talking about a team that committed 17 turnovers. Got to find a way to get that down just a little bit further while creating just a few more turnovers. If Pitt focuses in on these 3 areas and improve, Pitt can absolutely take a step forward and maybe get to that 8 or 9 win plateau.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into all things college football. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more content. And make sure to visit our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time for our next patient on the 2024 College Football Autopsy Report.